By the way, one more for you before we go. Here's what we're getting at.
Hey, God's getting claustrophobic. He's got to get up.
At some point in time, guys, our second church plant, now it's called The Awakening, but when we launched it, it was called Chorus Church. So they're now 16 years old and doing well and everything. It's kind of grown up, which is fun to see. But Elena and I put this together. This is old school. So we put this together 17 years ago when we were going to go tell people what it is that we're doing. If you look on it, you're going to see our values, our vision, our team, our timeline, our budget. The kinds of things you're going to need to think about are going to be in this document, which you guys have, but don't read it right now, okay? Because we give this at the end of the 4 days. Make it look like your own. It's not in print. It's on digital. It's on whatever. I don't care. But make sure. What we're trying to do with you is here's the things you need to think about so that if you want to go present what your church is about to somebody, because, say, you're trying to build a team and recruit people, they're not going to just come because you're a nice guy. Well, they might. But they're not going to stay just because you're a nice guy. They're going to stay because there's a mission and a vision and values and purpose and function and all that for them. So what we're trying to get at is what's on this document as we talk about these things. One person, give me a value that you wrote down for your team or group. Did we get that far?
Significance.
Just in a sentence.
We value significance. All people are significant.
Yeah.
And so our behavior will be, when we meet, it won't just be through texting or a phone call. It'll be face-to-face. We'll value face-to-face.
Yeah.
Meeting face-to-face.
Awesome. You guys catch that? Value people, that they matter. They'll meet many pictures. One more value, then we'll move on.
Discipleship.
Discipleship, okay. How so?
Because God's command and the anticipated
I'll hold that for
behaviors.
you. I got it for you, okay.
Because this is God's command,
God's command.
and the anticipated behaviors are we hold classes, Bible studies, we mentor people.
Great. Yeah. Discipleship, they'll hold classes and Bible studies and mentor people. Value statement. So our second church will be named Chorus, not because it was a little misleading. Chorus for me, it's kind of mosaic of music land. Chorus for me is the chorus in a song. The chorus in a song is when everybody kicks in. The bass is there. The bass is there. The drummer doing his 4 on the floor ride roll is there. All the different pieces are there. So we would say, Chorus Church, you have a part. Without your part, and then our final line was many voices, one song. So we're all singing together, but it's many different expressions because of the people part of it, but the value got embedded into everything that we do. So be thinking about that and how you're going to explain it and the behaviors that are going to be shaped as a result, and then live them out. You don't have to have it stated great. I didn't hear any statements about the Oaks when I just read off 5 values that this place has. I just felt them to the core, and that's what you really want to get to. Core values, people will feel them to the core. All right, Micah is going to share with us now. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. So we've been walking through kind of this process. What are the pieces that you've had an opportunity to work on so far? Just as quick review. Prayer? Okay. What else? What was that? Where you're called to, the place, the context, and then values, right? All of these things fit together. When you're thinking about the place that you're doing ministry, that really captures where God is calling you to. And then when you think about the values, it's really what you want to exhibit as you're doing the work of planting. One of the really key components that we also need to bring into this conversation is what is the vision? And the vision is really where those two things kind of coalesce, right? We talked about the needs of your context. When you're thinking about the needs of your context, the vision is how is God calling you then to meet those needs? When you think about the values that you want to bring in the ministry, how is God specifically calling you to live out those values as you reach these people? So I'll just use an example because I heard the word discipleship as one of our values, right? When you think of discipleship, what do you think of? Give me some examples. One-on-one. Okay. What else?
Praying together, reading the scriptures together.
Praying, reading the scriptures together. Sending. What's that?
Modeling.
Modeling. Vulnerability. So we have a lot of different slices when we say that word discipleship, right? What's unique about the way that you will value, if that's one of your values, discipleship, comes about through the vision that God gives you. The vision has in mind the context, the people that you're seeking to reach, the people that you're seeking to bring the gospel to. It has in mind the values that you want to represent, and it gives you a unique picture of the destination that God has for you and for your ministry. And thinking about this, it's really important as we think about vision to recognize that it gives us the opportunity to bring about agenda harmony. When we have a clear statement of where it is that God is taking us in the future, it gives us the ability to clearly invite people into the church that we're planting so they understand what it is that you're inviting them into. And I kind of think of it like this. Here's you as part of the team that's planting the church. I'm going to bring this up here, actually. You get a sense of where it is that God's calling you to this destination. This is your vision. But what do you need if you're going to be successful in accomplishing that vision? Goals, steps, strategies. Most importantly, you need people, right? So you're building a team and you're beginning to cast that vision. And as you're casting that vision, and I'll use discipleship because we use that as an analogy, you say we really want to be about disciple making as a church. That's part of our vision. So you say that and you're meeting with a potential team member and they say, you know what? I'm passionate about discipleship. So all of a sudden, their journey hits your journey on this subject of discipleship. It seems as though there's a shared vision or a shared purpose together. But what you didn't know was when they said discipleship, they had a meaning in mind that was an exegetical, expository study of the scriptures that was very like getting into the historical context of the scriptures. And you were thinking doing life together and like having barbecues and modeling that. And time progresses and you begin to see there's a huge gap between the vision that this person had and the vision that you had. So I'll give you an example. One of the churches we planted, I like Dave, I'm also a musician, and we were planting in kind of an artsy hub of a downtown area. And as we started planting that church, we wanted to have musical excellence, so much so that we said creativity is one of our values. We want to bring our creative gifts with excellence when we gather together for worship. And so what do you need if you want to have good worship? Good musicians, right, that produce the music. So one of our early days, I came across a guy that had a master's degree in composition and was a bass player who had studied under some epic bass players actually in Southern California. And so I was like, hey, I'd like to buy you coffee. And I sat down with him and I said, tell me a little bit about what you envision when you think about worship in the local church. And he said, so here's our connection here is music. And he said, I really want to see classical music have a resurgence in the local church. And I was like, okay, that's cool. You have gifts and abilities and a vision that I don't have at all. And when I think about the context where we were planting, it was a creative, artsy hub, but this was also the area that I described earlier where the least and the lost were living, where it was a community of a lot of poverty and widows and orphans. Is high-class classical music going to be the thing that gives them a voice? Probably not. And so I had to say to this guy, I love your heart, I love your gifts. We're actually headed in this direction when it comes to worship. If you'd be willing to come alongside us in that vision, we'd love to have you be a part of what we're doing. And he said, you know what, I'm going to actually I'm good with that. And it took us time, right? Because you have to kind of test the waters. And he ended up bringing some aspects to our worship that couldn't come about any other way than his gifting that were in line with the vision. And here's how incredible God is. We ended up in a building where he could teach lessons and hold his recitals, where they could have classical music recitals for his students. So there was a fulfillment of that vision, but it wasn't the main thing that was our worship gathering expressions. Had I yielded to him and said, oh, well, you're a musician, you're really skilled, and we need you to be here, we need you. So yeah, you run with the classical music thing. That would have taken the church in a different direction. And I think that's one of the tendencies for us leaders. We want people so badly that we allow the vision that God's given us to adjust. And it creates this vision disunity or this agenda disharmony in a sense, thinking about it from that perspective. So I can share more illustrations of this concept because it's so crucial. When you think about leading a church plant, it's keeping the vision as one of your primary tasks, which requires, again, one ear to the Spirit. What is the vision God has for us? And then a conviction in how we lead with people moving forward. So, yeah.
So how do you determine your visions from your department heads? Do you talk about their visions?
Well,
So I have a group.
Yeah.
I just put a group together for a plant. Do I go to them personally, and this is my vision, ask them where they are,
Yeah.
So that's a great question. And in a church plant, typically the vision starts in the church planter. And so they're inviting people into leading alongside of them into that vision. In an existing church, it's much more of what's the vision that God has for us that we're trying to discern together.
The plant, you're bringing in people, they agree they're gonna be with you in this plant. Do you ask them where their vision is compared to where your vision is?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to have this conversation, to even bring about the clarity, which means you have to have the vision really clearly described to be able to have that conversation.
Good point.
I think that's a great, yeah.
Yes, this is a good topic. Just piggyback on what he said. So from your experience, church planting, God gives one person the vision. Always. That's the question.
I have not seen it be otherwise
Thank you.
in my experience.
Okay.
Okay.
That's anecdotally. And I've seen situations where there's a group of people that have a vision to start a church and they call a pastor and it's a train wreck
Exactly.
because it was their vision and then he's come in as the chaplain for their vision, but maybe God's given him a different vision and there's this gap is big.
Absolutely.
Now, there's always unique stories where a scenario where something did work out like that, but in my experience, it's been, I don't know, David, your years of experience.
It's more what Mike has said, and I would say this is why this is so important, this topic and the values topic, because when you get out there as a church planter, there's a joke that's like any warm body will do great, you come on in, and the temptation is to dilute your vision or your values to the next great thing that you hear. So you have to be in a position to tell some good and even godly people, that's great, that's not where we're going.
Yeah.
There are many fine other churches, you're probably going to be frustrated here. And that's okay.
Very good, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, and I think the tension, though, I want to point this out, too, because this is a really key thing. I think that apostolic leaders, people that typically start new ministries, have that vision. They have a sense of how this is supposed to look, but they're also often terrible at really developing leaders to own that vision. And it's kind of like, you're here, you're a warm body, okay, go get them, team. And then they're frustrated when the person doesn't get it. And I'm saying this because I am that problem. Like, that's my scenario. I want to hand it off, and I want to see you do really well in it. But the longer-term pastoring and discipling and developing and modeling, it's not my strength. Like, I can start stuff, and I accidentally start stuff often. But the follow-through and developing people, and that's why you need a team. That's why you need people that can help say, hey, this is the vision, this is where we're headed. How are we going to mentor people into owning this? Because one of the other liabilities with a really, kind of a top-heavy style to visioning leadership is that other people aren't empowered. It's your vision and it's your model. And when we talk about the role of the church, like the Ephesians 4 fivefold, we're about the equipping of the saints, right? We need to equip all of the saints in their gifting for the work of ministry. And so I think that you have to bring those liabilities to this conversation on visioning, because ultimately you want a movement of people that are on mission for Christ. And that's in line with the vision that God has given you, and you're trying to empower them. I mean, really, we want more people in the driver's seat, right, in ministry. We want more people saying, I'm passionate about this. Did you have a question, Tavi?
When you have a core team prior to launching a church, do you look at the core team as contributors to the vision, or do you look at them as people who would embrace the vision and come and help you do the work that you've already set as a vision?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Yeah, I think of it as like texture to the vision. Like you might have a sense of what the vision is, but you never, as the lead pastor, knew that it would have a nuance to it. Like, for example, this church I was describing in Vancouver, compassion was one of our values. And I didn't know that would become adopting a local elementary school. That texture came from the leaders that God brought into our core team when we sat down and said, what are the skills that we have? And we had 3 or 4 teachers. And we also had some folks that worked from home in the community that could do lunch buddy kind of programs in the local elementary school. And so that created the texture for the vision. Compassion was this value, and we said we wanted to help people discover God. So there was a high emphasis on people that didn't already have faith. And here's a way that we lived out that vision and that value in the leaders that God brought to our core team. So I would say be cautious, like back to what Dave was saying earlier, be cautious. You're the one that's tasked with keeping the vision, but provide opportunity for people to have creative influence and bring all of their gifts into it. So, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's good.
This is a great topic for me. I just want to know. So I like what you said, Tavi, and I like the example you really cited about the classical composer. And how do you, and what I've seen in that is that when you kind of align your vision to the vision of the house, God in his way always makes a way for you to get your own, to get your fulfillment in that. And most times, it's very hard to explain that to someone that comes on board. Yeah. And I was just curious if you could just go a bit deeper on how did you were ready to walk away from that guy. What did you say? What did you do? How did you present that he bought into the vision of the house or the vision you laid down and was able to kind of delay his own vision? Mm-hmm. What any insights on how to do that?
I think with a ton of grace, and prayer, and I look back at that success story of how the, recital space opened up and all of that. God did that. I don't want to take credit for that. I knew that we had to be clear, though, so that the vision wasn't diluted. And in that process, it's kind of this, and I probably didn't do it as well because I was 25 and a little bit more arrogant and hard charging, and hitting the wall helps wear that off over the years, and so. At the same time saying, hey, we do want to invite you in to use your gifts, but it won't look like what you're describing, And I think sometimes people come in and they have an agenda. I think about another church plant I was connected to, kind of a similar story. A guy came to the lead pastor and said, how we don't have a piano? We don't have a beautiful, grand piano. I'd really like to buy the church a beautiful, grand piano. And the pastor said, well, we kind of just need a sound system right now. Like the grand piano, maybe someday or something, but that's not a need. It doesn't fit where we're at. And so he said, if you'd like to give a gift for that amount of money to help us start, great. And the guy said, well, no, I don't. What he discovered later was this guy was dating a gal that was a pianist, and he wanted to buy a piano for the church so she could play the piano. So he had a mixed motivation. Yeah. So, long story short, it comes back to the need for us to have that clearly stated vision. So let me give you a couple of examples of kinds of vision statements, and I think you'll find this on page 23 or 4 in your notebook. Let's see, what do we got there? Yeah, yep, 24, on page 24. There are different types of vision statements. And when I say that, it's not that you should have all of these types of vision statements. These are just different examples of kinds of vision statements. So a vision proper statement is like the fullest statement of the needs and how the church will address these needs. Clarity here provides greater clarity in the development of further vision type statements. So when Dave held up that packet that's in your binder for Chorus Church, that's a vision proper. It's a whole church plant proposal. It contains within it the vision statement, but also the values and ways to partner with the church. That's one kind of vision statement. Within those kinds of vision statements, there's typically kind of a style or an approach to stating your vision, which is either qualitative, quantitative, or a process. And this is what I mean by this. Qualitative vision statements address what we want to become. So I have a friend that's planning a church in Tacoma, Washington. They say, we want to be a community of imperfect Jesus followers living for the good of our city. A community of imperfect Jesus followers living for the good of our city. That shows you some qualities that they have. That there's a space, if you're not perfect, to follow Jesus with them. And that as you're following Jesus, they're hoping that it's going to make a difference, that their community is going to be transformed. Another friend that's up in Marysville, they say it like this: love God, love people, make disciples, keep it simple. That's their vision statement. It shows you some significant qualities, right? The keep it simple one in particular, which I really appreciate as they're thinking about that. Quantitative vision statements address what we want to accomplish. They're oftentimes numerical even, like we want to plant 50 churches by 2050. So it's a goal that's very specific that you can measure in what it is that you want to accomplish. Process vision statements address how we want to do ministry. So for those of you that were around back when Sun Life was doing stuff or growing a healthy church, it was the win, build, equip, multiply. That's their process. Or now there's a bunch of churches that have adopted Mancini's come, grow, go. Or different iterations of that kind of statement. That's a process kind of vision statement. So I'm giving you these examples not because it matters really what kind of vision statement that you develop, but that so you understand the kinds of statements and then can develop a clear statement that you're able to use to call people to the vision that God has called you as a church to. So in the end, you may have like a tagline kind of statement that would be more of an abbreviated thing. Maybe it goes on your business cards. Do people do business cards anymore? No. It goes on your sticker. It goes on your Instagram, that kind of a thing, right? Your byline, tagline, vision statements. So on page 26, we've got the process of discerning vision. And here's how this works. We want to give you the rest of the half hour, so until 2:30, to discern the top 3 descriptive words that identify the deepest needs or burdens evident in your planting context. And then what would it look like if that need or burden was fully addressed? So then you can, from that, begin to craft the statements of vision. And we want to encourage you to do this together in connection with whatever churches are represented here. So some of your churches may already have a vision statement, and you could bring that to the forefront at that point in the conversation. So still take the time to list out the 3 descriptive words, what it would look like if that burden was, and then look at that vision statement. And so maybe this helps edit that a little bit, or maybe this just is a clarifying time that says, yeah, we have the vision that God has for us at this moment.